It was late into the night when I set out on what should have been a routine drive home. The roads were eerily empty, and the fog seemed to thicken with each passing mile, casting an unsettling veil over everything in sight. My headlights struggled to pierce through the dense fog, making the road ahead seem like a dark, impenetrable abyss. I was driving along a stretch of highway known for its quiet desolation. It was supposed to be a straightforward route, but tonight, something felt off. The air was unusually cold, and an inexplicable heaviness hung in the atmosphere. My car's radio, which had been playing a comforting background of music, suddenly crackled and went silent. I fumbled with the dial, trying to get it back on, but only static responded. As I drove on, I noticed a pair of headlights in my rearview mirror, closing in fast. It wasn't unusual for someone to be on the road at this hour, but the car behind me was unnervingly close, almost as if it was tailgating. I glanced back, trying to make out the vehicle, but the fog made it impossible to see more than a vague shape. The tension in the car grew palpable. I decided to speed up, hoping to put some distance between us. To my horror, the headlights behind me seemed to match my speed exactly. No matter how fast I drove, the car stayed right on my tail. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I tried to ignore the growing sense of dread. Then, without warning, the car behind me flashed its high beams. I was momentarily blinded by the intense light, and when I could see again, the car was gone. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking I had finally lost it. But as I looked around, I realized I was completely alone on the highway. The car had vanished, but I wasn't alone for long. Moments later, I saw a figure standing on the side of the road. I couldn't make out any details through the fog, but it was clear that this person was waving frantically. I slowed down, curiosity getting the better of me. The figure seemed desperate, almost as if it needed help. As I approached, the figure moved into the middle of the road, blocking my path. I could now see it more clearly, a gaunt, ghostly figure with hollow eyes staring directly at me. Its expression was one of pure anguish, and its presence was deeply unsettling. I slammed on the brakes, coming to a skidding halt just inches from the figure. The moment I stopped, it vanished into thin air, leaving only the fog and the eerie silence in its wake. My heart raced as I looked around, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I quickly started the car again and sped away, not daring to look back. The rest of the drive was a blur of fear and adrenaline. When I finally reached home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me. The phantom figure, the taunting headlights, it all felt like a nightmarish blur that I couldn't escape. Even now, as I think back on that night, I can't help but wonder about the figure on the highway. Was it a lost soul or something far more sinister? That stretch of road remains a chilling reminder of the unknown horrors that lurk in the darkness, waiting to make their presence known. It was supposed to be a simple late-night drive home after a long shift at work. I was exhausted, but the route was familiar. Route 13, a quiet road that I'd driven countless times before. The road was usually peaceful, with little traffic and only the occasional house dotted along the way. But tonight was different. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. The headlights of my car illuminated the road ahead, but the surrounding woods seemed unusually dark, almost as if they were swallowing the light. An uneasy feeling crept over me as I drove, but I shrugged it off as fatigue. As I navigated the winding road, I noticed an old, dilapidated house up ahead. It had always been there, but tonight, it seemed even more foreboding. The house was shrouded in darkness, its windows like vacant, hollow eyes staring into the night. The gate was ajar, swinging slightly in the breeze. I glanced at it and felt a chill run down my spine. Without warning, my car's engine sputtered and died. I pulled over to the side of the road, my heart racing. I tried to restart the engine, but it was no use. The car was dead. I glanced at the clock. 3 a.m. I was miles from the nearest town, and there was no cell service. I was stranded. I decided to get out and check the engine, hoping for a quick fix. The night air was cold, and the silence was almost oppressive. As I walked around to the front of the car, I heard a noise behind me, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper. I turned around, but there was nothing there. Just the dark, empty road and the looming presence of the old house. I shook off the feeling of dread and popped the hood, trying to see if there was something obviously wrong. The engine seemed intact, but as I leaned in closer, I heard the whisper again. This time, it was louder, more insistent. It sounded like someone was calling my name. I straightened up and turned around, expecting to see someone, but there was no one in sight. The whispering grew louder, more urgent. It seemed to be coming from the old house. My curiosity got the better of me, and despite every rational thought telling me to stay put, I decided to investigate. I approached the house, the gravel crunching under my feet. The front door was slightly ajar, and a flickering light from within cast strange shadows on the wall. I hesitated for a moment before pushing the door open and stepping inside. The interior was just as decrepit as the exterior, dust-covered furniture, broken windows, and an unsettling stillness. The light source was an old lantern on a dusty table. I looked around, feeling as though I was being watched. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty. The whispers were now a cacophony of voices, all calling my name. My breath quickened as I backed toward the door, desperate to leave. As I turned to leave, I noticed something in the corner of the room, a figure standing in the shadows. The figure was indistinct, shrouded in darkness, but its presence was palpable. It moved slowly toward me, its form becoming clearer with each step. It was a woman, or at least a shape that resembled a woman, with hollow eyes and a mournful expression. Her gaze seemed to pierce right through me. I turned and fled, stumbling over the debris on the floor. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, as I raced back to my car. When I reached it, I found that the engine started up without a problem. I wasted no time getting back on the road, my heart pounding and my mind reeling. I drove home in a daze, unable to shake the image of the ghostly woman and the haunting whispers. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. The old house remains a chilling mystery, and I never drive on Route 13 after dark. The memory of that night is a constant reminder of the inexplicable and the terrifying. I was driving home from a late-night work shift, feeling the fatigue seep into my bones. The road ahead was a familiar stretch, an old country road that wound through dense woods and past an abandoned farm. The stars were barely visible through the thick clouds, and the moon offered little light. It was the kind of night where even the shadows seemed to move. My car's headlights cut through the darkness, but the trees along the roadside appeared like twisted skeletal figures. I tried to shake off the growing sense of unease and focused on the road. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. About halfway through my drive, I noticed a vehicle approaching from behind. At first, it was just a distant pair of headlights, but as it drew closer, it became clear that it was a large, dark truck. I thought nothing of it and continued driving, but the truck kept getting closer, tailgating me aggressively. I tried to speed up, but no matter how fast I went, the truck remained right on my tail. The pressure was mounting. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, and my heart raced. I glanced in the rearview mirror, trying to get a better look at the driver, but the glare from the headlights made it impossible. The truck seemed to have an unnerving presence, almost as if it were trying to intimidate me. Suddenly, the truck's headlights flashed brightly, blinding me momentarily. When my vision cleared, the truck was gone. I was relieved, but also deeply unsettled. I drove on, hoping that the encounter was over. Not long after, I saw a figure standing by the side of the road. It was a man, dressed in dark clothing and holding a flashlight. He looked out of place and I felt a pang of concern. My instincts told me to keep driving, but curiosity and concern for the man's safety got the better of me. I slowed down and pulled over, rolling down the window slightly. The man approached the car, his face obscured by the darkness and the beam of his flashlight. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "I think I saw something in the woods." Before I could respond, the truck reappeared, its headlights blazing like twin suns. The man's expression changed from concern to sheer terror. "Get out of here!" he shouted. "It's not safe!" I didn't need any further encouragement. I quickly rolled up the window, slammed the gas pedal, and sped away. The truck followed, its engine roaring with a menacing growl. I could see it gaining on me, and the sense of dread intensified. The road seemed endless, and the truck's headlights felt like they were burning into my soul. I turned onto a smaller, winding road, hoping to lose the truck in the twists and turns. The truck followed relentlessly, its presence a constant, oppressive weight. Eventually, I reached a sharp bend in the road and took it at high speed. The truck, unable to handle the curve, skidded off the road and disappeared into the darkness. I didn't look back. I drove straight to the nearest town, my hands still shaking as I pulled into a gas station. I recounted the night's events to the station attendant, who listened with a look of disbelief. "You're not the first to encounter that truck," he said, his voice low. "Some say it's been haunting these roads for years. People have reported similar experiences, and some have even vanished without a trace." I never saw the man with the flashlight again, and the truck's dark presence became a chilling legend in my mind. To this day, I avoid that stretch of road at night. The memory of the relentless pursuit and the spectral figure remains a haunting reminder of the unknown dangers that lurk in the dark.